Greetings and salutations, this is Hugh Jarsz, the biggest YouTuber ever! And good morning, Jarsholes! Welcome to episode 2 of the Weekly Jarsz for the week ending the 9th of December 2023. If you're watching because you watched the Daily Jarsz or perhaps the first episode of the Weekly Jarsz, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with me. And if you're brand new to the show, a warm welcome indeed. A special shout out to those that clicked subscribe this week. Welcome to the world of Jarsz. I hope you enjoy the show. We'll be laughing at the willfully stupid, as always. And I've moved the time slot slightly to 19:30 hours UTC, a bit earlier for me and any guests who happen to be in Australia, but amazingly, I will now have semi-regularly have something occur at 7 a.m. my time on Saturdays. So I have to get the show out regardless. And let me know if Google hasn't yet fixed the echo problem when I play clips. This week had a few events, so we'll look at the news and then we'll have a regular look at CC and Level Earth Observer. And we have an idiot of the week this week. Who will it be? And will there be only one? I also have a special guest today, as you would have seen from the thumbnail. But before I introduce my guest, I want to thank my YouTube members. Thank you once again for all that you do for me, and thanks for being part of the Hugh Jarsz movement. And helping me laugh at the stupid today is Daniel Pratt.
Yes, that joke has persisted. I'm taking names, but thank you, Hugh. How are you?
All right. Well, I'm talking about it in the chat, so I felt I had to go there.
Yes, I did. I noticed that inveterate instigator Clive Wells is the source of the trouble, and Stringer News. Names are being taken. When I'm ultimate supreme ruler of the world, prices will be paid for this insolence.
Just like when Ned Flanders takes over the world, eh?
Indeed, exactly.
What have you been up to lately? Have you done much on your channel recently?
I haven't done anything on my channel recently. I've been lacking somewhat in motivation. I do feel the need to. I am coming across the argument that you can't have something come from nothing. Increasingly in creationist circles, and I feel like that might deserve a video of its very own.
Mm-hmm.
So I am recovering some. I have been suffering from vertigo for a little bit, but
really?
Yeah. But the medication seems to be kicking in, so that's good.
Okay, vertigo is when you're sort of a bit dizzy from heights and things, or when you stand up.
Yes. So when I the heights from when I stand up, and I'm not that tall, so it shouldn't be that incapacitating. But there it goes.
This is the first time I've heard this, and we had a conversation yesterday actually about height and body mass and things like that. And so I was surprised to hear that. So I guess it affects anyone who gets off the ground.
Yeah, well, it's an inner area thing. So there's some sort of problem with the connection between the inner ear and the balance centers of the brain.
Yeah,
that's all it does.
Oh, I wish you all the best with that. I guess you're in a chair, so it'll be all right for this stream. So that's good.
Should be fine.
Yes. So we got to go on for some news now, and the big news this morning is that everyone's lovable rascal, that bastion of peace and kindness, Santos Bonacci, has had his channel deleted. I can't imagine why.
It boggles the mind that anybody could object to the content that Santos produces. on any level. But YouTube are strict masters, so you've got to keep them happy.
I mean, I would have thought all the vile, hateful, illogical, false, and downright disgusting things he said in these videos, might have had something to do with it. But I think
might have had something to do with it. But on the other hand, he's been doing that for quite some time, so it really does stagger the imagination of what new offensive material he's found that extends beyond his old offensive material.
Yeah, and that's the point I want to make. I mean, how vile do you have to be before YouTube deletes you, I mean, he's been around for years.
Yeah, somebody says, the Turtle Moo says that it's only taken them 13 years. Yes, and Clive Wells says he doesn't produce content, he spews it. No, I'm not sure that spewing is necessarily the bodily function that I would associate with his
the other end, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, though perhaps now that I think of it, Santos's material more suppurates than anything else. It oozes from open weeping sores. That's kind of how I view. But yeah, long overdue coming. He's just one of the most obnoxious individuals I've ever become aware of, yeah, I can't really understand why he merited the presence he did on various Flat Earth Debunkers channels. Like, a couple of people invited him on, and I kind of feel that we're all the poorer for knowing that this individual exists.
Yes. As Dave McKeegan mentions, he's not going to get his $10,000 challenge that Santos put out.
Well, yes, tragic. He was that close, though. I don't think that the challenge has anything to do with the channel existing, right? All you needed to do was show photographs of what.
He met the challenge, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So the channel's existence is neither here nor there, as far as the terms of the channel are concerned.
Yes, Santos is now gone like a turd wiped from our backsides, So that's a good thing. On to something a little bit more closer to home, I guess. Since his debate with Aryan TikTok flurf Caleb last week, FTFE has been having a Twitter war with him. And Caleb has also apparently had his minions striking FTFE's channel with community strikes. And Caleb just looked like a lying fool in that debate. And it seems, instead of countering the arguments with information from sources more reliable than a parody article, he prefers to go through the malicious use of the system route. And I guess YouTube had no choice but to process those strikes. And FTFE has had his channel demonetized, which is a big deal because it's the main source of income that he provides for his family.
Though the latest reports that I've heard are that YouTube have suspended the strikes, having been made aware of solid evidence that this is a malicious channel attack. So I think Craig was obviously distressed, very, rightfully so. But I think that this has been resolved. I think that Caleb's confession that this was a malicious act on his part has sort of short-circuited the entire situation. And I think that the YouTube, that's what I heard anyway. I can't claim to be completely abreast of the situation.
Well, I'm just reporting what was on Craig's community post, of course. But I think it sort of highlights, first of all, it highlights how disgusting flirts are, especially when they're not winning the argument, which they never do. And second of all, the risk of if you depend on your YouTube for an income, which I don't, obviously, but FTFE does, and his wife works as well. But this is the only way he can contribute at the moment, because he's disabled and he's going to have an amputation soon.
Yes, well,
and
he's a rather proud man, and he has
as he should
declined his. He has gone to great efforts to make himself not dependent on a military disability pension. And I have to say that I feel that is the wrong move, and that he shouldn't have done that, because the military disability pension is there for a reason, and he is entitled to that money. It's not a matter of him sponging off the taxpayer. He has done service for it, so I can understand where his pride comes from, but I rather feel that this is money that he deserves, he has earned, he may feel that it is charity, but it is not. It is a payment for the service that he has submitted, and he is entitled to it. So I would, and it is not subject to the whims of YouTube or the restraint of flat earthers. As you say, Caleb, in that debate, his major defense was, well, just because it matches the observations doesn't make it right. Well, that's the only metric we have for adjudicating whether or not any scientific hypothesis or theory is correct and valid, is that it matches the observations. If you're going to assert that another theory could do that, please provide it, and we can develop experiments that will distinguish between that and science as we currently understand it. If you don't have such a theory, if you insist on fatuous nonsense like monkeys moving the LIGO detectors, then you are scientifically irrelevant. You are meaninglessly blathering, and you can shut up and stop wasting everybody's time. But the main thing that annoyed me about the debate was Caleb refusing to allow FTFE to broadcast it, and insisting on Jaren's channel. I have my own personal, Jaren apparently attributes a statement to me that I never said. It was Craig who said that, and then refuses to correct his misunderstanding of what happened. But Craig is a professional YouTuber, and you produced content on YouTube that Craig could use to make money. You may feel aggrieved by this, but this is how YouTube works, and this is how the real world works. So pull your head in.
Does the same thing on TikTok and YouTube.
Yeah.
It's hypocritical. And you outlined how we change our minds. Basically, you need better science to beat science. And FLIRFs don't seem to understand that. They don't look at reality from that point of view. They feel something, therefore it must be true. That's certainly the way they give off. That's their approach to life and how they determine reality. And that's why we laugh at them so much.
Yeah, indeed. If you've got a hypothesis, detail it so that we can work out what the consequences of that hypothesis are, and then we can test it, and we can distinguish between it and other hypotheses. This is how science works. At this stage, dark matter is a hypothesis. It's not. We don't know that dark matter exists. There are alternative explanations for some of these absurd phenomena. It's a persuasive hypothesis with a lot in its favor, but there remains a lot to be determined before it can be accepted as reliable. And so they just don't understand the mechanisms by which science advances.
It's a part of its we depend on looking at things objectively, and most FLIRFs don't seem to understand what the word objective actually means. And I don't mean the dictionary definition. I mean what that means in practice and why it's important to determine reality. It's got to be something that works no matter what who you are, and if the same rule applies regardless of the situation, then you can be pretty sure that that is a reflection of reality. But if you just coming up with subjective information like it looks flat, so it must be flat, that is only subjective. It cannot be used to determine reality.
So they oscillate between two different, and I'm giving you, but they oscillate between two different sins. One is that they are overly generous to their emotional and sensory impressions, whereas we have much more sophisticated instruments for measuring and determining these things. But the other one is that you talk about impartiality, and they would reverse the allegation. They say, you are too persuaded by the fact that the observations match that the consequences of your hypothesis match the observations. We are more dispassionate. Caleb and Anthony Riley and Flatsoid in recent conversations have said, just because the hypothesis matches the observations doesn't mean that the hypothesis is correct. And technically speaking, Popper would agree, but until you have a hypothesis that matches the observations as well, you are irrelevant to the conversation. You need to have a hypothesis, and the other thing they get wrong is that it has to have quantifiable predictions, not just qualitative. The existence of disturbances at LIGO, for instance, is not sufficient to establish the existence of gravitational waves. They must match in character the predictions. There are numerical, similarly with the Pound-Rebka experiment and gravitational time dilation, the change in wavelength of downward propagating electromagnetic stream. You have to predict how much a time dilation is going to occur across the distance that has been predicted, and how much that is going to change the wavelength of the beam. You need to quantify your predictions. It's not sufficient to say, well, I've got a theory and my theory predicts that there will be time dilation as well, which is what Riley does claim. He claims that his theory would predict that. That is not sufficient. You need to quantify exactly how much, because Einstein did, and quite courageously too, because at the time he did it, there was no way of measuring this effect. It took many decades for the effect to be able to be investigated, and when they did investigate it, they found that it matched his predictions. So this was a way that his hypothesis could be falsified. They imagine themselves to be being so impartial that they're not persuaded by observational evidence, which is ludicrous.
It is, and the reason you want to quantify it is so that you know whether or not you've got it right. Basically, you've got your understanding of what's happening right, and that way, if you can predict it every time, that's pretty objective.
It is pretty objective, but you need your result to be more significant than the errors associated with your observations.
Yes. Yeah. And then it's another thing, they don't understand margin of error analysis. But I know Caleb has something to say about this.
Nuh-uh.
Did that echo, guys?
Not for me, but
yeah.
I'm on StreamYard.
Yeah, but Mr. 42 last week got the echo, so hopefully they fixed it. They didn't send me a message this time, so if they fix it. So,
excuse me.
Yeah, your vodka went down the wrong way. It's only 6:30 in the morning, So yeah. But I did want to encourage people in regards to FDFE. Can you go to his channel, and there's a link in the description of this video. And if you're a member, there's no. Well, first of all, we need to find out if that's been reversed. So check his community page. But Craig was actively saying, stop your automatic transfers of money to YouTube for memberships and things like that, because there's no point giving it to YouTube when he's not getting it. So check the community page to see what the latest thing. Thank you, Turtle Moves. And there are other ways of supporting him, which is in the description of his channel, which is at the link in the description. So please go and support Craig if you're not doing that already in a way that's useful to him. Stringer News 1 says the strikes have been removed, so that's good. I will. I took off my membership in response to what Craig posted, but I'll put it back on now because I don't want to lose my membership chat. You know what I mean? You get the free one every month. Okay, so where was I up to? We sort of went off on a different tangent to what I was going to cover, but that's good. It was a good conversation. Yes, for Caleb, I suggest you don't harass him and definitely don't give him a taste of his own medicine. I think that's pretty clear. So, yes. Now, we're on to, so in the Weekly Jarsz, we have a regular look at CC and LEO, Level Earth Observer. So let's have a look at CC and, I've got to add it to the stage first. I'm disappointed. I'll just refresh just to make sure nothing's come in while I've been sitting here. Nope. He hasn't put anything out in the past week. I hope CC's okay. But, unfortunately, we can't laugh at CC.
Well, sometimes life gets busy. It's
We didn't do his cartoon.
He is a very strange individual, CC. When he's calm, he seems, somewhat reasonable and pleasant to talk to, but it seems that he can wind himself up into unreasoning anger very, very quickly. He's, in some senses, a perpetual motion machine.
Yes. Yes. It keeps reinforcing his own delusions. But, anyway, so the other person we look at is Level Earth Observer. He has put out 2 videos, and they're quite, well, the first one's a bit so ridiculous that you think, why did he bother? But it supports his narrative, I guess, even though ineffectively. And then one about the moon landing. So let's look at the first one.
Check this out, and I'll come back. There will be new opportunities for science and discoveries. Not only will we increase our knowledge of our planet and the universe, we will advance research that leads to breakthrough science in areas that benefit people on Earth, like healthcare, and give rise to technologies that do not yet exist. But I am most excited for our kids. Right. Today's announcement is a clear message to the next generation of Canadian explorers, future geologists, engineers, astronauts. Fantasy. Canada is inviting you to dream big.
Note how this is LEO's modus operandi. He primes you to look for the paranoid delusions that he has. He's putting up a picture of a harness. He had a picture of a guy in a harness before, and he's got an arrow pointing to here. This is the point he will make, but we will discuss that when we get there.
Thank you for giving me the chance to make history with you today, all the way from space. No, thank you for highlighting the fact you're wearing a harness and making it obvious for most to see. Only the fantasists, naive and the gullible, will conjure up some delusional excuse for what we're seeing here and for all the...
He's projecting as well, as you can tell from what he's saying.
Well, there are so many levels on which this is wrong. So,
let's watch the rest of the video, and then we'll talk more.
Okay.
The other things that are highlighted, but you made it so obvious, in fact, that when the news played your little clip later on that day, they had to cover up the obvious harness at play. Look. There will be new opportunities for science and discoveries. Not only will we increase our knowledge of our planet and the universe, we will advance research that leads to breakthrough science in areas that benefit people on Earth, like healthcare, and give rise to technologies that do not yet exist. But I am most excited for our kids. Just going to forward it, because that stays there all the time, covering up the obvious harness at play. Now,
He's referring to the banner.
Josh, don't get me wrong. That usually flashes up with the start of a story and then disappears so you can see the full screen. Of course, in this case, they realized Matey Boy here's harness was looking rather obvious, and as a result, they kept their letter and their wording up. But that is rather obvious. I mean, the people who actually believe the globe and space at this point in time are just lost causes. It's been explained to them, it's been highlighted, and the fact the globe's impossible. All that leaves these people then is to make ridiculous, delusional excuses, lie and misrepresent, and essentially fantasize. It's bizarre. It really is. These people, obviously, I'm a bit of a space basher, so you can imagine I'm quite popular with these toy-playing fantasists, and and I do get quite a lot of videos made about me, but I just don't watch them. Why would I shed light on dark pantomime? No, I've got better things to do. if they had scientific demonstration.
If this is an example of better things to do, it's amazing. He just goes on like that. Yeah, so it's what he's complaining about is this area here.
Refute
He thinks that's proof that there's a harness involved. But I think you were going to explain what I was going to say, Tony, so away you go.
Well, his argument is that shirt does not hang in the way that it should under the influence of gravity. Therefore, there must be a harness. If there were a harness, however, the effect would be symmetric. It would be applying on the other side of the gentleman's torso, not just on one side of the gentleman's torso. He's blithering. The other element I would suggest is that on the news, when the news clipped this, they cropped the image. They cut out the gentleman's pants, but they left in this. So the claim that it was fake to remove that by putting a banner, the banner didn't cover anything. It covered the boundary at which the shirt, the deviation of the shirt is most obvious, but you can still see that the shirt is wider at the top and narrow at the bottom. Whereas they could have cropped out that region of the shirt completely if they were attempting to mislead. But Level Earth Observer has made his hypothesis testable. We can now go to the television station and ask the people there whose decision it was to put up the banner and keep up the banner, and those people must be part of the conspiracy. So now he's made a testable hypothesis, but it is telling that he doesn't even bother to test it.
Absolutely. And it's just, he's talking about fantasies, but it's completely out of his own fantasy. It's because he doesn't understand. Well, I mean, he does understand what he's looking at, but he's pretending that he doesn't to suit his own narrative.
Well, there's a, he is going into every video that he looks at with a cognitive bias. And he claims that the globe is physically impossible. If this were the case, then every scientist on the planet for the past 500 years would have agreed with him. But he cannot conceive that any of the scientists who have been alive would understand reality as well as he does. For some reason, we can demonstrate the curvature of large bodies of water by putting a GPS receiver on a ship. It's that simple.
Yep.
So when he claims that you can't demonstrate convexity on the surface of large bodies of water, he's wrong.
In fact, there's a horizon is demonstration of that. A horizon over the ocean. So
yeah, but you get into a discussion of this is why I'm not necessarily a fan of optical evidence, because they always end up in the weeds of Rayleigh criterion or refraction or what have you.
Well, Fliss will always find anything to argue with, so regardless of what evidence you put up. I've just got to address Second Best Bob's given me a super chat for £5. Thank you very much, Bob. He says, I'm going to change it slightly because I think YouTube might have a problem with one of the words. My conspiracy theory workmate said today that Angela Merkel and Theresa May are sisters related to the naughty German leader from World War II.
Yeah.
It seems, yes, conspiracy theorists get into the strangest things. That's why they're so funny.
They are quite funny, but I'm just wondering at the imagination involved. Like, what is it that inspires these bubbles of nonsense? Anyway,
it seems to be part of human nature, unfortunately. But people like Little Earth Observer propagate it by priming people who watch his videos. As he putting up pictures of harnesses and things like that. Saying, I didn't see that anything when I first watched this. And I was thinking, what the hell are you talking about? And then when he was saying that it's basically just the shape of the shirt that is his argument, and I thought, you're accusing other people of being fantasists and pantomime people. That's exactly what you're doing, and yet people who watch his videos don't see that.
Well, the other element, the other element of all of this is, for this to work, the harness must be outside the shirt, right? In order for the harness to conceal to deform the shirt in that fashion, it must be outside the shirt. It should do it on both sides, and evidently it doesn't. We can't see the harness, so it must have been removed with CGI. So if it was removed with CGI, how was this error not fixed? Or apparently they fixed it on one side and then didn't bother to do it on the other, because while the CGI removal of the harness is a phenomenally good job, I can see no artifacts there. They're so clumsy that they leave this immediately obvious problem. There's no internal logic to Leo's stuff. He goes in with a bias. Anything that confirms it is accepted unquestioningly. Anything that might contradict it isn't even considered. There's no testing of his hypothesis. There's no verification that what he claims is true. He just makes a claim, and he asserts that it is immediately obvious.
Yeah. Dr. Nimrod's seen the flaw in your logic, Tony. He said they're using special NASA invisible harnesses.
Yeah, I should have thought of that myself, I guess.
Yes. But I think you've gone through all that, but for this particular clip, the thing that Leo and you have missed is they don't really need a harness here. He could easily be standing on the ground and just sort of moving up and down slightly to simulate the fact that he's floating.
Yeah, for this particular shot, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, what would you achieve by having a harness in this particular shot with him just in the frame like that? And the thing about the banner is it has to be down the bottom, otherwise you'd be across his face, so which would ruin the shot. So yeah, they don't seem to understand how. Well, they do understand. They just refuse to accept that their point is baseless, and there's no real reason to think that.
Yeah,
flirfs. Gotta love them.
It always amazes me that the simple arrogance. So the flirfs imagine that NASA must be hiring the very best CGI people in the world, but they are so much worse than the flirfs would be. Yeah, it's
the worst conspiracy in the world, and yet no one's ever come forth as a whistleblower or anything. So
yeah.
They're dropping clues everywhere. That's the stupidest thing. They say, oh, we'll look at that in the memes, actually, where the big conspiracy is dropping clues that it's a big conspiracy. Why would you do that? That's kind of counterproductive to a conspiracy. Yeah. But we'll look at that. Let's go on to these other video we put out this week. The painful truth about the moon landing, starting Neil Armstrong and Leo, perhaps Leo. Oops, hang on. I didn't rewind it. So this is from a press conference before Apollo 11 launched. So, and he's taken a tiny, tiny section of it and blown it up out of all proportion. So let's watch Leo do his thing.
So let me quickly set the scene before this ridiculously obvious clip here of poor old Neil. This is approximately 10 days before Neil, Buzz and Michael Collins supposedly set off to go to the moon, okay? And Neil here, the legend of the moon landing, gets asked this very simple question, one that should fill him with joy and excitement, but quite clearly does exactly the opposite.
So notice the priming again. He's sort of saying, well, it should be like this, but I'm seeing the exact opposite. He doesn't have to say that at all. Just show the video and then talk about the issues about it. But he wants people to be starting to think in a certain way and therefore look at it with that bias, which is deceitful, really.
I believe at this point in time, these guys have been told they're not going anywhere near the moon. And this was the first public appearance after being told they're not going anywhere near the moon. And as a result, very, very sketchy, awkward, unhappy, uncomfortable-like behavior. Neil, take it away.
At what point in the timeline will the American It's going to take place in...
Clearly it's not now. Let's come back again and zoom in on this poor fella here, who's obviously realised he's not going anywhere near the moon. I think the penny is starting to drop as he's basically gone from thinking he's going to be a hero to the realisation he's actually going to be a villain. What?
And, there's no real reason to think that, Elio. You're just saying that because you want it to be true. He's a military man. Neil's a military man. I believe he was a commander at the time. Lieutenant colonel he was. And the military aren't keen on talking to the press in general. And plus, in these days, they didn't have media training or anything like that. He just happened to be the guy who was going to the moon, so they had to talk to him. It seems rather unfair to, assume that he'd be as slick as a politician, and yet that seems to be Leo's point of view.
Well, there are the point that I would make is the total lack of context. So, for instance, the pause after the question. To me, it seems obvious that Mr. Armstrong is looking off to somebody else to see who should take responsibility to answer it, but that has been cropped out, and so but Leo leaves that awkward pause in, having carefully removed anybody other than Armstrong. So he's done his very best to reduce, he hasn't included any of the previous conversations. We don't know if this is the first time Armstrong has gotten to utter a single syllable in this. How long has he been here? How harsh was his training schedule before this? None of this context, which would help us correctly interpret the body language involved, is available to us for this analysis. Instead, we've got Leo's unsubstantiated fantasy about this, and Leo himself seems completely unaware of context. At this stage, Neil Armstrong had been to space, right? He had been in orbit. Now, Leo claims that that's impossible. So if Neil Armstrong's Gemini mission was faked, which Leo must claim, then Neil Armstrong should already know that space missions are faked. Leo's ignorance here is sufficiently profound that he's made up something that cannot possibly be true. If all space missions are faked, Neil Armstrong should already know that at this stage in his career. So he should already know that he's not going anywhere near the moon if Leo's hypothesis is correct. We can therefore assume that Leo's hypothesis is not even internally consistent. He's just making shit up as he goes along.
What a surprise. And the other point that occurred to me is that there must be thousands of things that were planned to do. And planting the flag must be one of the lowest priorities of them all. I mean, it's important from a visual point of view, but from an astronaut point of view, he was probably more concerned with far more important things, and it might have taken him a little while to sort of remember when that was planned. And from all reports, Neil Armstrong was a very reserved and insular sort of guy. And he was 32, something like that here. So he was relatively young. He wasn't like he was a seasoned professional or anything in terms of dealing with the media. It just seems unreasonable to expect him to be very, like I said, like a slick politician. It's not his job. Yeah. Let's listen a little bit more.
Look how uncomfortable this man is. And think about it. 10 days' time, you're going to fly on a rocket. You're going to break all sorts of records. You're going to be the first man to leave Earth and go on to another body. In this case, supposedly the moon. You'd be absolutely buzzing. The adrenaline would be flowing out of you. You'd be beaming like a Cheshire cat. But look at Neil here when asked about the flag.
At what point in the timeline will the American flag be erected on the moon surface? going to take place when we are both early in a time period.
Jeez, that is painful to watch. Once more, body language experts, watch this and try and justify what we're seeing before our eyes here.
At what point in the timeline will the American flag be erected on the moon surface? But it's
Poor old Neil. Even AI is calling out this silly moon landing now. Look, Google's AI technology suggests Apollo moon landing photos are fabricated. Could have told you that years ago. I mean, Neil,
So the first law of Flirt applies here. I found the article. It looks slightly different in this, but it's the same article. And so let's read through it quickly. A recent development in the ongoing debate over the authenticity of the US moon landing photographs has emerged, fueled by artificial intelligence. During the world tour of artificial intelligence event in Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin was presented with an AI analysis suggesting that images of US astronauts landing on the moon might not be genuine. This analysis, based on neural network technology, was demonstrated in a video featuring Putin and Nikolai, I'm not going to say that, from there. The video, which has gained significant attention online, shows Putin questioning the authenticity of the Apollo 11 mission images. The other guy explained that the neural network deemed almost all elements in the US moon landing photos to be fabricated, citing discrepancies such as light-dark contrast. However, he noted that the AI did not express any doubts about the images taken by the Chinese lunar rover during its Chang'e mission. But if Leo read on, down the bottom, readers should take the analysis with a grain of salt, as the AI tools have often produced incorrect analysis and even false information when presented with questions.
Okay, so here's the Leo evidently doesn't know anything about training data sets. So you train AI with data sets of truth. So here are a lot of valid photos. Then you present them with something that is completely different from the photo. So obviously you have to train them with something other than lunar photos. And then when you show them lunar photos, it goes, that doesn't look like what I've been that doesn't look like the stuff that I've been analyzing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so astonishing. They don't look like other photos because the subject matter and the environment and the cameras are different. Fantastic. You've done really well, AI. Go sit in the corner for a bit. The other element of all of this is, you're accepting Russian, what is for all intents and purposes Russian propaganda. I don't have, I don't consider myself to be much of a conspiracy theorist adherent, but if anybody, if Putin or friends say anything or are associated with anything, I'm instantly skeptical of its veracity. And particularly if that thing can cause the Americans some embarrassment. This again, and again, it's internally inconsistent. If there is this grand conspiracy hiding reality, how do they not know that AI is going to do this? Why are they not suppressing this AI information? The Russians have and have had their entire their own space agency. Is that fake? People who have their own space industry are now faking their own work. How is this conspiracy working? What are its details? Who's responsible? He was suggesting that there was sufficient media control that they could place a chyron over a video. But now the same conspiracy with the same amount of media control is just allowing publication of this sort of story. In what sense does this seem sane? how are these decisions being made? What's the policy here? Who's implementing them? As soon as you start analyzing the internal lack of logic, it just becomes the demented ramblings of a pathetically lonely loser who spends his time, who pisses away his life, poring over this sort of nonsense. And quite frankly, based on my interactions with him, the world is better off that he doesn't try and do anything worthwhile. But he himself is just wasting his existence.
Yes. The other point I wanted to make is I'd like to know what they fed to the AI, because did they give the original NASA footage, or did they give one of the thousands of copies that have been made in the 60 years since then? Because it'd be interesting to find out what that actually was, because presumably something that's been copied, of course you get light dark contrast issues and things like that.
Well,
you get artifacts and compression artifacts and things, and what's the thing, chromatic aberration.
Well, the simple fact is, yeah. Well, the simple fact is that any photo taken on Earth has atmospheric effects, and any photo taken on the moon doesn't. When as light comes through the atmosphere, the directions from which light reaches a target are vastly more diffuse than they are on the moon. So yeah, there are, those would be the dominant features, I would think. But yeah, I think that they were talking about images, weren't they? So not footage at all.
We'll go back to the article. No, that's before then.
So photographs.
Just his images, yeah.
Well, at the top, it's second line there. Moon landing photographs.
Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully they fed the original NASA images, because that's a thing that flirts do all the time. They don't use the original NASA images. They use an image that they found online somewhere and said, oh, look, the Earth's been pasted in. Yes, because someone fabricated that photo based on the NASA images, not the actual NASA images. So
it's photographs from the moon and photographs on Earth are qualitatively different in several respects. So training an AI on photographs on Earth and then giving it photographs from the moon. I'm not sure what Chang'e images they gave it. Clearly not photographs of one person taken by another person. But it's AI is still very early in its development, and I wouldn't be taking anything that AI says. I mean, if you look at I don't know if you've ever seen ChatGPT trying to play chess. But it sort of vaguely knows how stuff works, but it doesn't really understand. So it will, it's been trained on chess games, but it doesn't understand that if you move a piece away from its opening square, that there isn't still a piece on the opening square. So later on in the game, it will bring out another rook. It basically imagines. It hasn't really mastered the idea that the piece moves. It considers the opening squares to be sources of pieces. And consequently, it doesn't really understand that only one piece can occupy a square. So it will take its own pieces. Well, it will move a piece on top of its own piece and then move away and assume that the piece is still there. Because it doesn't understand that you can only have one piece per square. So there's just this, there are levels on which AI doesn't understand basic concepts And so you need to be extremely cautious in dealing with it, because it just isn't working in the same way that a human mind works.
Yeah. Well, a non-flirt human mind, at least. All right, let's watch the rest of this video.
Clive Wells is verifying what I'm. Yeah.
Sorry, Tony. Oh, you said Clive Wells.
Oh, Clive Wells.
What you're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
AI calling out the moon landing for the charade that it is, along with many others online. And of course, when we look at the old footage, which is considered evidence for, but actually is evidence against. Think about it. The only evidence out there is actually incredibly damning, going against the moon landing. And like I said, we've even got AI now calling out the moon landing for the silly charade that it was.
Already debunked, Leo.
Okay, when he says that that's the only evidence, there's let's look at the evidence that we have. We have the fact that the Tidbinbilla station was, for some portions of the Apollo missions, the only
Tony, you just froze.
Station on Earth that was with the. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Tidbinbilla. I think you're back.
Tidbinbilla was the only space station that was in line of sight with the command module on its way to the moon. So all of the radio traffic between the command module and the and ground bases were coming through the Tidbinbilla station and the Park station. We have moon rocks that have evidence of that have micrometeorite impacts in them. These rocks cannot be produced on Earth because micrometeorites burn up in the atmosphere. We have retroreflectors on the moon that reflect lasers. Anybody who has sufficient equipment can target these and bounce laser beams off the Earth. We've got plenty of evidence that people have been to the moon.
Wikipedia has this that I'm showing on screen now. It's all independent evidence that not involving NASA, not involving Russia. It's just stuff that I remember because I was a kid at the time. I remember for the later missions, I was a bit too young for Apollo 11. That amateur astronomers all across the world were filming it going to the moon and coming back, just as Astronomy Live, our YouTuber right now, did with the Artemis project. Yep. So we'll be doing that again and getting that independent evidence that it actually went there. And yet these just ignore it all.
So when the first man-made vessel made it to the moon, this was the Russian Luna 2 probe, the Russians believed that the Americans would simply deny that they had made it there. So they made a point of releasing a large amount of sodium that would make a flare that was visible from Earth. And that flare was picked up by international astronomers and reported on, so that the Americans had no choice but to concede that the Russians had made it. So this claim that the only evidence we have is blah 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 is again born from ignorance. For all that he sits in front of screens in a darkened room, obsessively ruminating over each and every image that flashes before his eyes. He doesn't have a broader understanding of the concept of the data that is available or the context in which he's analyzing things. He completely ignores multiple strands of evidence that just prove that what he's spewing is nonsense.
And like I said, this is just Wikipedia. That's, Wikipedia is just a bucket where people put information. There's heaps of other ways to find out independent evidence of the moon landing. So he's just wanting to be a pain in the ass, to be honest. Speaking of which, I think we're finished with LEO for this week.
I do just want to say that LEO is one of the more contemptible individuals. He just lies. That's all he does is sit around and confect lies. We've seen multiple times in this brief stream where he has manipulated and taken out of context various footage for no other purpose than to misrepresent the truth.
Yeah, he just wants to support his narrative and delusion. I don't know if he really believes it or not. It's hard to tell sometimes. But yeah, we'll leave that there. We had enough of Elio for this week. Now for the idiot of this week is Big Pig Slapper Oik. I mean, what a heck of a name. We've seen him before. I think you even had a discussion with him on FTFE. He's a hillbilly might be one way of describing him.
Inbred bunyip is the Australian term.
The bunyip. Bunyip or yowie? Which one?
My acquaintances would definitely use the term bunyip.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he and Rachie have been having a little bit of a dust up. He invited Rachie on to have a discussion, and then we'll get into that. But I thought I'd show a couple of videos of his. They're nice. They're thankfully very short. So let's have a look at his first one. This is biblical trees. Would you believe? Have I got this on speed? Yes, 1.5 times. So it's short, but we want it as short as possible.
Here's this biblical wood. Now, there's the piece I showed the other day.
For thou art with me, my rod and my staff.
The telescope. Now, one I forgot to show. See, if that was natural, modern forest fire, my hand would be getting black.
He seems to have the TV on in the background quoting Bible verses, which is interesting.
He does, yeah.
Yeah. I was actually thinking, have I got something going wrong with my audio there for a minute? But anyway.
Because you know how it works. And you burn around a rock and it gets black, and you rub your hand on it, it gets black. So you rub the burn mark off. That is the outside layer of the rock. Will it focus? See? John 15:6. This was cast into the fire because it was not producing fruit.
So is he saying that's a biblical tree and it was burned, but it's not a forest fire burn, and it couldn't possibly be just the color of the rock, could it? Couldn't possibly be that.
Yeah, that's clearly a chemical reaction of the outermost layer of the rock with air. It's just a result of air exposure.
Could even be lichen. But he says it's petrified wood. It doesn't look like petrified wood to me. It looks like layered quartz.
It does. Yeah, it's definitely not wood. Nor is it petrified wood. It's just a rock.
Yep.
And again, this is the sad reality is that people are pissing away their lives without the first idea of what they're even looking at.
Yes. Yeah, they don't have the knowledge or experience to be able to, determine what reality actually is. That's where all this comes from.
Yes.
Remember the tree of life? That was the only tree that was saved. And so it's physical, spiritual.
So is he saying the tree of life grew? He's obviously in America, probably in Appalachia. He's saying the tree of life grew there and not in somewhere closer to the Middle East where all the Bible came from.
Yeah,
that would be rather odd.
Yeah, I don't obviously his claim is not delineated with sufficient specificity for us to test it.
Or reality, it seems.
Yeah.
And what do you call it? Quote ceremonial, because he used it for Noah. See that? It's part of the rock.
Yes.
But
what's wrong with that?
Oh yeah. My brother gave me a chunk of this. He got this in West Virginia. Sandstone, that's part of cedar. That's some of what Hangman 1128 shows. I'm pretty sure it's cedar.
Didn't you just say it was sandstone?
Yes.
So now it's cedar. How does that work? I don't understand.
Some cedar. I don't know what this is. but it's burnt. And there, still got the bark on it.
Is my shadow. I shall
Bark. Well, I guess lichen could be considered kind of bark. But yeah, not really. And again, it looks like a sedimentary rock to me. So
Well,
bits and
it's,
pieces
yeah,
of it.
yeah, it's he's just saying, that it looks like bark, therefore it is bark.
Looks flat, it must be flat. Yes, subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and just this is mud fossil university. It looks like a tree
Yes.
stump, therefore it must be a tree stump. It looks like a dragon, therefore it must be a dragon, etc., etc.
Yes, never mind that the dragon would be like a significant percentage of the Earth's surface if it was the dragon that mud fossil. What's his name? What's the guy who does that? Roger. Roger thinks all of North Africa is one big dragon. So anyway, it's hilarious in their delusions. There's 9 seconds left of this video, but I don't want to watch those 9 seconds. I've had enough. This one, I think you'll really like this one, Tony.
I'm going to do a simple video. Okay. This is for Globber Mom. Yes, it's the right pronunciation, the way you spell your name. I'll get to it later, but we're going to do this. Let's say this is the sun. You say the sun is a ball, a 3D object. Okay.
Why couldn't you get a clean piece of paper? Why would you
Yeah.
get something that might reveal something about your life and make it public? It's so I couldn't give a shit sort of approach, isn't it?
Yes.
And what caught my eye was sleeping warrior is right. Now, those are words that aren't usually put together.
Yeah, well, yeah, because he's almost never right. But
If you tell
yeah,
me the sky is blue, I'd have to go out and check. Anyway, well, watch this. You'll get a good laugh out of this.
okay.
The sun's rays are always parallel. They never diverge. Okay, let's take this 360.
And of course, they do diverge about half a degree or so, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, but it's not enough to be significant, at least to our eyes.
Yep.
60-degree circle. We got a light ray coming off here. You agree? No, this
Here
is
comes the funny
light
bit.
drawings. Okay, they never diverge. That's 90 degrees. Let's cut it in half. Let's divide this up. Okay, there's 90 degrees. Now, if we're at 45 degrees, does the sun ray go that way? Or does it go that way? Now, we're working off a degree wheel. We're working off a degree wheel. Now, if it's a 3D ball, we'd have a ray there. We'd have a ray there. Have a ray there. And we'd have lots of little rays in between. So is that converging or diverging? You say they never diverge. Well, how can they never diverge if the sun is a 3D ball, a circle?
He's completely missing the point. Is because what we see is what we're talking about, not what happens on the other side of the sun.
It's the behavior of sun rays on Earth. So and he's misrepresenting what happens because he doesn't understand waves. So actually, each point on the sun's surface produces photons that will basically propagate in all directions. They go in straight lines, but they don't go in straight lines only along the radial component. So near the top of the sun, you'll have the photons going off it parallel to the equatorial ones. But the light rays being parallel is a statement about how they arrive at Earth. It's not a statement about how they are emitted from the sun.
Exactly. Yeah, it's what we see, and we can only see the photons that are coming to us, and those photons aren't divergent, or at least not in any significant way.
Yeah.
The significance is another thing flirts have trouble with, isn't it?
Yes. Well, again, in order to determine significance or otherwise, you would need to have some understanding of numbers and some quantification of the phenomenon involved.
Yeah. I'm not sure. We've got 15 seconds. Let's see what else he says in that time.
Even a flat circle, they have to diverge because that means that would be a laser beam shooting straight out. So yes, Sleeping Warrior's right, and you have no clue what you're talking about.
So ironic.
It's
Yeah,
this is the other thing is that they don't even provide the context between for what they're saying. I've got no idea whether or not this is in any way relevant to the conversation that Globomum and Sleeping Warrior were having, and I suspect that it really isn't. Globomum isn't the sort of person who makes that sort of mistake. But yeah, it's again, this is a grown man putting time and effort, portions of his existence, into just meaningless drivel.
And in this case, I think we know for sure that he doesn't know any better. And he's just assuming he's right because he has no reason, because he hasn't got enough knowledge and experience to know otherwise, no reason to think that he's wrong. And it's hilarious, isn't it?
To quote my original interaction with him, he's a fucking idiot. And
oh, yes. That just reminds me. Yes, go on.
Yeah. Not one of my proudest moments, but that is it remains as true now as when I said it.
Well, I turned it into I would have made it a short. They didn't have them back then.
Yeah.
It's the day you became a legend. Remember that?
Yes.
There
yes,
it is.
I do remember that.
Here we go.
You, sir, are a fucking idiot. You are a fucking idiot. You're a moron.
That's glorious. Absolutely glorious. I don't mean to embarrass you, Tony, but that was just brilliant. I love that.
Well,
That's why
I was sick of his nonsense by that stage in the interaction.
He well deserved it. Yes, I'd forgotten about that actually. So I'm glad to remember that. All right, so he's been having not only Raichi, and we'll have a look at what he said to Raichi in a minute, but he also STSC, who's one of the nicest people you'll meet. Let's have this is a very quick video, so
STSC, STS, whatever, it's tapping out.
He can't even spell STST.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It's tapping out. 6 minutes ago, you state you want an adult conversation, but start by calling me a brain-dead moron. Do you not see the irony here? Yeah, I did call him a brain-dead moron.
So he admits it?
Because he called me the definition of a space comma.
So apparently brain-dead moron is an appropriate response to being called a space comma.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can see down here, he doesn't know how to use the comma key.
He doesn't know how to use the comma key. He doesn't know how to spell dead. He doesn't know how to spell hypocrite.
It's more than 2 syllables. So.
Well, dead is only 1.
Actually, in his defense, I had the opportunity. Remember Professor Julius Sumner Miller?
Yes.
When I was at university, he came and gave a lecture, and I had the opportunity to go and see that lecture. And in there, he, as part of his comic approach, he said, "I tell you, you are dead. D-E-D, D-E-D, dead." And he wrote that up on the board. So he's in the same league as Julius Sumner Miller in this case.
Well, the Julius Sumner Miller is a legend. So and a lot of his presentations are up on YouTube, and they're well worth tracking down.
I could say that he had a lot to do with my interest in science too. I remember watching. There used to be a regular TV program.
He was certainly an inspiration for me. Yeah, he was certainly an inspiration for me, and I encourage everybody to track his presentations down, because they remain really, really good. And if flat earthers spent a little more time watching the stuff that he does, they'd be a long way towards being cured. Anyway.
Yes. Yes. Just a few seconds more of this.
Really? Really? You're a hypocrite, STST. And yes, bring it. I dare you. I dare you, sir. I see proof of this every sunny day. So you want to be a hypocrite? You want to bring, call, you want to be a hypocrite? Really? Okay.
Okay. That's that one. All right. So this is when he had this is 9 seconds long, would you believe?
Mm-hmm.
Volume's up. Let's see what he says here.
She's sitting here calling me a liar. Okay. Fixing to prove you a liar, lady. Fixing to prove you a liar.
And the next one on the same thing.
That's the company. That's the company she likes. That's what I'm saying. Make all the videos you want. Make all the videos you want. Once you go hang out with your boyfriends.
Not sure what that means. Rachie did a response video, but for some reason I couldn't find it quickly. I watched it this morning and then I went looking for it so I could play it in response to that. But apparently Rachie responded to him, but he just ignored it because he wanted to put out a video where he complained about her not responding. So
Right.
I couldn't find it on Rachie's channel quickly, but anyway, Rachie's, when I had her on 2 weeks ago or so, I wasn't quite sure if she was a Glober now, but she's definitely a Glober now based on her recent videos.
Yeah, so she has taught herself quite a bit of physics. She still makes some mistakes sometimes, but she seems to have recovered. Tusk points out that she does have some woo beliefs, so she doesn't get to laugh at everybody. That's true, but you make incremental improvements, and I think that anybody, she doesn't get to laugh at everybody, but she deserves full credit for dragging herself out of the delusion of flat Earth, because very few people can. If she has achieved what remarkably few people ever have. And I don't think that any other woo beliefs diminish that in any sense. So, saying that somebody isn't perfect is, it's true, but none of us are.
It has taken her a while, though. I remember you and Dr. and Professor Phil Bell patiently taking her through some things. We lost you.
I'm back. Sorry.
Yes, I remember you. I remember you and Professor Phil Bell patiently taking her through a few things, and she still didn't get it. But I also remember SDST, seeing we mentioned him earlier, when he first said, "The Earth isn't flat. I was wrong," and that sort of thing. In that video, he also said, "I still think there's something going on in Antarctica and things like that." And until you've thought through it enough, you're not going to dismiss baseless conspiracy theories straight away, especially if you spend a lot of time and invested a lot of effort into looking at them in the first place, even though you were looking in the wrong place, obviously, because you weren't getting the information you needed to dismiss them.
It becomes a part of your identity.
Yeah. So I wanted to give you a bonus idiot of the week, which is Kyle Adams. I want to keep coming back to Kyle Adams once in a while. The first thing I wanted to point out, the reason I got this up, is to show how few views his videos get. 6 hours ago, and he gets 5 views.
Wow.
45 views one day, 2 days, 52 views. So in some sense, that's good. It seems most of the time he just repeats other people's videos. And when he's not doing that, he's sort of going out and talking to flat earthers and asking about them. And I want to play a video that in some ways is quite sad, actually. But yeah, here's him talking to these two flirts. Might be music that's I'll just sort of move on a bit. Don't want that copyright. Come on, get off.
Here we got Just Jack.
Right, there we go.
Just Jack Flat Earth. Yeah.
Right here.
Okay. So critical inception. Okay.
Yeah.
So how long have you been a flat earther for?
Since 2017.
2017. All right. So how has that really changed your life?
Oh man, so many ways. Like, it changed me as a person to my core. Like, it's a whole different perspective. And in some ways it ruined my life, but in other ways it gives me an opportunity to start over and build new things. And the new things I built is just amazing. I've met so many awesome people, and like I can't even begin to describe like how intense the ride has been. And I've been to every single Flattoberfest since 2019, and I went to the Dallas conference right after that. I wasn't planning on going, but I got a taste of Flattoberfest, and I was like, I need to go to Dallas now. Gotta make it happen.
Yeah.
So I did, and just like it's been such a blast. And
no one wants to be a flat earther, but once you get it, like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, got a little bit of flack from my family when they found out, and it actually ruined my marriage.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, she left because she just...
I mean, I feel for the guy. It ruined his marriage, going into flat earth. So how terrible is that? I don't know how good a marriage it would have been, but obviously, but the fact that you allow something stupid to affect your life in such a significant way.
Well, the entire notion is destructive, but at the same time, this is what they're getting now at this convention where they turn up, and after years and years of isolation and ridicule, you can see their excitement, the endorphins that are pumping through, being with like-minded individuals. They're adults. They're responsible for their own choices.
They are, yeah, and that's the sad thing. And this is conspiracy theories in general. I mean, there are genuine conspiracies out there, obviously, but people believe certain things that other people told them to believe based on nothing other than the fact that someone told them. And that leads to destructive behavior in your life and affects people like this guy. It's quite sad. I hope he didn't have any children. Not that I don't want him to have children, but when if it broke up for this reason, it's sort of so sad. And one day he'll wake up and realize how wrong he is, I'd hope, and look back and think, oh God, why did I let that destroy my marriage? I just feel for the guy.
It didn't happen to Bob Nodell. A lot of these people carry this delusion. But whatever.
Yeah. Yes, they're so committed to their delusions. I think I've made the point with this video, so I'll leave it there. Let's go on to memes. Meme roundup. So, rotating over 50 RPM creates up to 2 Gs, but has no... I hate people inappropriately using apostrophes, but it has no attracting mass at its center. FE lovers research the difference. Rotating at 0.4 RPM, no. It's a lot slower than that. And 1 Gs, it's not rotating at Gs, plus an attracting mass at its center.
Yes.
This is supposed to be a point. They're not even comparable. One's centrifugal force, and the other is gravity.
Yes. And the angular velocity of somebody at latitude theta is the angular velocity doesn't change actually, so it's radius independent. So it's just 2 pi over 86,400, or pi over 43,200. So it's a small number.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot of zeros after the decimal point before you get a 6 or something like that. I can't remember the actual number. FTFE remembers these things off by heart, but I've got better things to put in my head. But it's certainly not 0.4 RPM, and it's because that would mean in what, 2.5 minutes.
2.5
it
minutes.
rotated.
Completed a rotation, yeah.
And things don't rotate at G's.
Yeah.
The Ferris wheel, whatever you call this, would generate a centrifugal force of 2 Gs, perhaps, but the flirts just have no idea what they're talking about, and yet they still make memes like this. It's hilarious. Yeah. And seeing we mentioned gravity.
Gravity, you fucking retard! You fucking retard! Have you ever heard of fucking gravity? Have you ever heard of fucking gravity? Gravity! Gravity!
Thank you, Deciphile. Hopefully there was no echo on that one, so we got it right.
I heard an echo, so.
Oh, damn it. We got echoes, yeah. Oh, well, maybe I'm not getting an echo. I wish I would. Anyway. Damn Google. So this is, what I said about the conspiracy that it's leaving clues everywhere, so it's the worst conspiracy in the world. Now they're saying that the blue marble turns into Satan.
Wow.
It's a little bit complex, this meme, but it's incredibly ridiculous. Anyway, so this is not necessarily a flat Earth thing, but an interesting idea. Add commas to your passwords to mess with the CSV file that will be dumped into after being breached, which is not a bad idea, actually. And maybe a backslash or two. Yes, that's not a bad idea because we've had the Optus breach recently and a whole lot of others, and we will have more.
Yeah.
There's certainly a cyber war happening right now. So, yes, that's probably not a bad idea. So this came up in a debate I was having, and Flirts were saying, Flirts use critical thinking, but no, they don't. And these are I thought this is something useful. If you can say these statements, then you're probably more likely to be a critical thinker than not.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's all right to adopt a position based on the information you have. But if you don't have a lot of knowledge and you don't have a lot of experience, your information is not going to be very reliable. So you've got to be open to looking at new information and learning how to analyze it properly, which is what critical thinking is all about.
Yeah, it's you need to recognize the limitations of your own understanding. I often go to Clive Wells, amongst other people, to ask questions if I'm a bit dubious, a bit doubtful about can my own understanding be extended to this. But you need to understand that. Just because you think it makes sense, that doesn't mean it does. You need external validation. You need to check your work against that of other people.
People who are more knowledgeable than you in general.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah. And they could be wrong too, but they're more likely to be right than you are. So this is apparently the latest flat Earth model. There's 3 moons now, and 3 suns, and 3 districts. So I don't really need to say much about this, do I?
No, you don't.
It raises more questions than it answers. Put it that way.
I do want to make one point: Aurora Borealis, Antarctic. It's not the Aurora Borealis when it's over the Antarctic. That's the Aurora Australis.
Oh, yes, down here, yes. Yes, you can see it from as far north as Hobart sometimes.
Yes.
Actually, they have predicted it to be as far north as Brisbane occasionally, but it has to be extraordinary circumstances.
Yep.
Anyway, I think this is appropriate. It died before Eratosthenes, but he sort of put the last nail in the coffin, I'd say.
Yeah.
And 2 azimuthal projections there, one from the North Pole, one from the South Pole, demonstrating how that works.
Well, this is one, to me, this is fundamental. So the one on the left is the only map projection that gets distance from the North Pole correct for all points on Earth's surface. the one on the right is the only one that gets the distance from the South Pole correct for all points on Earth's surface. So they, but you pick any other point on the map, it no longer works. This to me is just very concise evidence of why the Earth cannot possibly be flat.
Yeah, because it has to be a sphere to be able to generate that projection in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another explanation for gravity that isn't gravity. They're saying you're being pushed down by electricity. How does that work?
Well, we use the. There are various experiments that try to detect charge distribution over the surface of neutrons by dropping them. But neutrons are electrically neutral, so they wouldn't fall if this was the case.
Not only that, they're basically saying the atmosphere is a tractor beam here, where it can push you away as well as pull. Which there's nothing here it makes any sense whatsoever. Anyway, yes, this is a Flurf meme, of course, but I think I can see a curvature in there, to be honest, a slight one, but you'd expect a slight one. So
yeah, I do like that the Flurf is up there with no oxygen.
Well, yes, that would explain a lot about Flurfs. Oh, Rimfondle's posted me some memes. Oh, thanks for that. I'll put them in next week's. Yes, voltage is not a force. Ships over the horizon. If you zoom in on this one, it's not going to come back, is it?
No.
Seeing it's nearly 7 o'clock my time, I'm going to leave it there, I think, Tony. So thank you very much for being my guest.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you getting out of bed early to join me.
This is not my normal custom, so you should feel extremely privileged. Very few people see me at this time of the morning.
Yeah, and you're just as beautiful as ever. So thank you very much for joining me. So if to the audience, if you've seen a silly meme lately, send it to me, as Rimfondle has done. You can contact details in the description of this video, but he's put it in Discord room. That's fine too. Let me know who you'd like me to look at in the Weekly Jarsz, particularly for the Idiot of the Week. I'll look at Leo and CC each time, assuming they've done something, of course. I appreciate all suggestions. And join me next Friday evening UTC at 19:30 hours, which is 5:30 a.m. Eastern Australian Standard Time, for the next Weekly Jarsz show, where we'll again look back at the week in derp. Do the YouTube things, like the stream. I always say scream. Subscribe. Click join to become a member and be part of the huge Jarsz movement. Leave a comment. I love to read your comments. In particular, if you're one of the few who watch my videos who aren't subscribed to the channel yet, please click the subscribe button below this video on your screen. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And I think that just about does.
There's nothing left to do, but there's nothing left to do, but cue the corgi.
You're despicable.
Piss off, you fat fuck.